Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. We're still doing the 3v3 thing in Grand Arena, and this time we're in episode 7, which means that we're in a new group. We're past the halfway mark, just barely, and that's kind of an interesting match today, just because I'm facing off against someone I've already faced off against in the past, and this opponent was in my bracket last season, in my, it was 5v5, and you can see I've added the screenshots from then, because I've kept those apparently, and I did end up beating my opponent. However, my opponent did full clear me with 0 fails, and the problem as I saw it in our match was that I was just like worlds ahead of them in efficiency, like just amazing compared to them.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
No, actually, my opponent actually has a really strong roster, and they are a very strong player. And so, I had my work cut out for me moving into this match, and plus it was 3v3. So even if I was worlds ahead of my opponent in 5v5, which I was not, I'm not, just to be clear, 3v3 is just so different. So looking at our stats, neither of us really held an advantage in relics. I clearly had more relics because, as you'll see in a minute, I had more gear 13 than them, but in general, we were pretty evenly matched there. As I said, I had more gear 13. I had more Zetas than my opponent, and my speed mods were, they were better. I wouldn't say I held an enormous advantage, but I think going into it, I held the material advantage in this match. Looking at my opponent's win record in Grand Arena, they have a very respectable record, and it's definitely something to fear in 3v3. So one new and exciting development that has taken place is that we can now scout our opponent's past defenses and offenses, and that means that you can kind of see what their tendencies are if you look back far enough. And one thing that I noticed, I'm not going to go in depth on all the different things I looked at, because that's probably something I should actually make a video of on its own, but you see that I've taken 3 screenshots and just shown you guys. My opponent has always used Darth Revan on offense every single time. That's consistent in 5v5 and 3v3, and so those are just the past 3 matches, but it stretches all the way back. So pretty cool. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to see a Darth Revan team, and as such I was able to deploy my own Darth Revan on defense. I was planning on putting him on offense if my opponent keeps his on defense. So anyways, just kind of an interesting thing to be able to look at. Now, looking at my opponent's defenses, there were definitely some strong teams on there, but my opponent had very clearly kept a lot of teams for offense, so I needed to be as efficient as possible, and our goal here is to be able to clear the bottom zone first, the 3 squad zones, so that we can know all the different squads we have to counter. So we're trying to use the best squad possible for each of these. We can't fail. We can't afford failure here, because my opponent, I know from past experience that my opponent is an extremely efficient attacker, and so I can't drop attacks, but at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm not using my very best squads against, weaker squads. However, the first squad that I needed to counter was this General Skywalker team with Ahsoka and ARC Trooper, and it was fairly obvious that I could just take Commander Luke here. This was a pretty obvious counter on my end. And the reason it was obvious is just because I knew that my opponent was probably not going to have Darth Revan hidden in the back zone somewhere. They were, as we discussed before, they were probably going to have Darth Revan on offense. And so even if they did have Darth Revan on offense, however, I did have Padme available to be able to hopefully be one of the teams to topple that squad. And honestly, we needed to be able to use a quality team to be able to topple this squad, just because there's not a ton of teams that can currently beat a General Skywalker team, even at 6 stars. Using Commander Luke is a no-brainer. You just, you can almost just hit auto. It's simple enough. Like, you need to have a good enough team to beat it, but once you do, you shoot him, you topple him, and he falls down, you can shoot the guys behind him, he stands up, you shoot him again, and it's over. So, nothing too crazy. My next match was going to be against Geonosians, and I loved that my opponent had put the Geonosians in the front zone here, just because I could take my Traya team, and I've been trying to save my Nihilus for a different counter. Nihilus goes really well with Traya and Scion, and he does have a lot of internal synergy with those two. So in 5v5, I usually like to take him with those two guys. But in 3v3, the Geonosians just don't hit hard enough before you're able to just wipe them out using Traya's lead. And so, I mean, you can see I've already taken out one of the Geonosians, and the other ones are almost dead, and Traya hadn't even had a chance to isolate someone yet. So, this wasn't hard. I took my relic to Marauder just for good measure, and, get 51 banners. It's not necessarily super efficient, but we did beat it in one try, which, in my opinion, in 3v3, being able to beat Geonosians in one try is efficient enough. So, got that done, and now we only have one more squad remaining until we're in the back zone and we can know all the other remaining squads that we can counter. If there's one team that people have been asking how to counter lately, it's Nute and Dooku variants. And so I'm taking First Order here. That's usually my response, is First Order is great. You can see Kylo Ren used his stun on Dooku, and there's no way to dispel that stun right now. He's stunned for 2 turns. He can't assist. He can't do anything. He's just stuck. So, he got 1 turn to try to do something, and that didn't do much. And now we can just clear the board. Droidica can present a couple problems here, just because you see we killed Nute once, and then he's stealthed, so we can't actually do anything, but we do have 2 dispels on this team, and that's enough against Droidica. So, one thing I do want to point out is normally I take Wat with this team instead of Kylo. And Wat is such a good plug-and-play character, I decided I wanted to use him or save him for later. I wasn't even sure for what, but, one of the keys in 3v3 is knowing what tools you need and which tools you can save for later, and this is definitely one of those opportunities to identify that. So looking here, you can see that my opponent actually had a Wat lead on his team, and it's kind of just interesting. We'll talk about that squad in a little bit, but the back zone did not have any teams that were extremely scary. There were a few problematic ones, definitely. And one thing that I've learned in 3v3 is that we want to just kind of hop from squad to squad, from zone to zone. Once we've cleared the first zone and we know all the remaining teams, we don't really care about what's in the ship zone. We already know what's probably going to be back there. And so instead, we're going to take out all the most problematic teams first, the ones that are going to have the most potential to kind of hang us up. And once we do that, I mean, if we do fail, then we can reevaluate what squads we can use against them. So the goal is always to full clear. And so if you think you can't full clear, maybe it's a different story. Maybe you do prioritize the top. But in this case, I knew that I had a pretty good shot at being able to full clear my opponent. And so I decided to just take out this General Grievous team if possible. We're using Jedi Knight Revan once again. And, this B2 battle droid is not dying. You always want to target B2 first, just because he is, he'll get way too many turns if you don't. If you just try to focus Grievous, you will end up not being able to kill Grievous at all. The B2 will take a ton of turns. He'll give a ton of turn meter to the rest of the droids, and there'll just be issues. And so, one thing that I do want to address, I know that, my buddy Klesso is a strong advocate for making sure to never do an AoE while B2 is still alive, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, at least in some regards. I think, however, that, I like to be able to just do the AoE and work on B1. It doesn't necessarily do a whole lot. I mean, I know that B2 does take more turns, and that can be frustrating and give more turn meter to them. However, being able to knock B1 down a bunch of levels while simultaneously doing damage to the rest of the team, in my opinion, is worth that, just because he's trying to heal his compatriots, and if you can just take him out early on, or at least, reduce his stacks to the point that he's not healing them very much, then you're really going to make your situation a lot better. And in this case, that's what I ended up doing. And, I even killed B1 before I killed Grievous, which that wasn't necessarily intentional. Once you've killed B2, which, he's always the main target, then you should always just be trying to mark Grievous. But as it stood, I had taken so many stacks off of B1 that he died kind of earlier than I had anticipated. So anyways, 51 banners. 51 is great against a threatening team like that. Like, you could definitely just get totally wiped out if you're not careful. And so 51 is great. I would have liked more though, because I'm selfish. One major component to the early 3v3 theory is trying to get undersized wins, and there are a number of characters that can provide you undersized wins, and one of those is Nest. With you can take Qi'ra, you could take Hoda instead, you could take all three if it was a really challenging squad, but trying to identify which squads you can undersize with Nest or Malak or Wampa is really going to be a huge benefit to you. And this is normally a timeout team. There's no offensive prowess at all on this team. There's no reason that you should try to use a full squad. My Nest is Relic 7, and so she has exceptional hitting ability along with really good tenacity, but that squad's a timeout team, and Nest just destroys it. Nest wants to avoid teams that she can't crit, and she doesn't have a super high natural crit level, so you got to be careful there. But there was nothing really to mitigate that on that timeout team, and Nest just had her way with them and moved on. One thing I really disagree with my opponent on here is the fact that they took the Kylo Ren team and put him on defense. First Order is so versatile and so strong in 3v3 on offense that I think that I mean, who knows, maybe one day I'll put him on defense. I did that with Bounty Hunters after months of insisting the Bounty Hunters should only be on offense in 5v5, but they're just not good. At least they're not good on defense. The AI plays them horribly, and you can just kind of swim circles around them. There's not much threat to First Order on defense, in my opinion. I know that people post up these really gaudy defensive numbers, and they can defend. They're a very strong squad regardless, on offense and defense, but I will just say, the squad, if you use the right counter, you just destroy it. You demolish it. It's not close. And you see that, I've barely lost any health at all. The trick now is to try to make sure I have Illuminated Destiny in time before I'm able to just take out Kylo. And that's really the only threat here. As long as you have faster characters, which BB-8 is already pretty fast. I have him at gear 13 anyway, so a little extra speed than you normally see. And then he gives Rey first turn, and she's kind of fast. She gives ability block to Kylo Ren unmasked, and then after that you just take out First Order Executioner and you win. So easy enough. So there were 5 total teams left, and you'll have to excuse my really gross looking chart right now. I'm trying to give a visual representation of what's going on and what teams I have available, and it'll get better over time, I think, or maybe I'll just drop it entirely, because this was a lot of work. I think I can get it better though. Anyways, so the teams on the left are the teams I need to be able to beat, and the teams on the right are the teams and characters that I have available to me. So Padme can beat any of these, and so can my bounty hunters most likely. The real question in my mind right now was, who could I use Malak to be able to counter? If I could solo one of these squads, which one could Malak do? And the answer was relatively obvious. You can't use Bossk just because if you get stun locked or something, Bossk and Jango can really mess with him. You can't do Night Sisters because I had a failed attack against that exact composition using Malak. You just can't, and it was against a significantly weaker Night Sister team. You could maybe do it against Wat and Mission and Zaalbar, but Wat was going to be able to take away all of my tenacity down and debuffs against Zaalbar, and Zaalbar would be permanently taunting. So I didn't think I'd actually be able to whittle away his health and protection fast enough. And then he could absolutely probably take out that Maul team, but so could almost any of these other teams. So the most obvious choice was going to be against this Bastila squad.
They've done studies, 60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, let's go see if we can make this little kitty purr.
So I just jumped right in, and I didn't actually take Savage this time as lead, because the only source of offense here is Ezra, and I don't think anyone really considers a Gear 12 Ezra to be a threat to be able to actually take down Relic 4 Malak. Even one as relatively weak as mine, and so, what we're doing here is they all have a ton of protection. Obviously, the Bastila lead provides a huge amount of bonus protection, and so it takes a while to chew through that. And meanwhile, we're just trying to, not be completely whittled down. And it's relatively easily. They're not really hitting for super hard, and eventually you can see like they're all feared right now. So unless I hit them, they're just going to skip turns anyways. And so I'm getting a ton of turns, and Ezra's already out of protection here. It should be easy enough to take out once I get Force Drain. So I have Force Drain, take Ezra down. Now we can focus on either Bastila or Barriss. And Barriss is kind of an interesting choice here, honestly. I don't think she's necessarily that optimized. I guess it's a decent squad, just because Bastila provides a lot of extra protection, and then once you get through that protection, then Bastila is able to help heal things. But the fact is, the two characters that she's trying to heal don't have very big health pools. They're not tanks. They're not super well armored, and so Bastila or Barriss, I should say, is a little bit wasted here. She can still be good, but I think she's probably better in a different squad. And you can see like Malak just doesn't care about what's going on with these guys. Barriss is not a match for him. Neither is Bastila or Ezra, and 56 banners is wonderful. It's the best you can get in 3v3, and we can move on to the next target, which is going to be this relatively, mediocre in the sense that it's not all Gear 13 and heavily relicked Night Sister squad, and I didn't really have a great option against it. I thought that probably I was going to be able to use troopers to chew through them, and my goal here was just to get a quick kill with troopers, and Spirit had the least health, and so I decided to target Spirit, and you can see Spirit is gone, and then Daka went and immediately was able to revive Spirit, and that's something I just didn't really take into consideration, that once I took out Spirit, I thought that I would probably be able to just keep the turn meter train going, and without having 5 characters, without having 5 troopers, that just didn't work out. So I just decided to take the loss, because at least all of their protection was down.
It's so damn hot. Milk was a bad choice.
So, not the most amazing of losses, obviously. I probably should have anticipated the fact that my troopers couldn't take out that Night Sisters team. Or maybe what I should have done, probably I should have just targeted old Daka. Like, I think I had the firepower to be able to do that. And once you take Daka out, then the chances that you're going to actually have her revive again are pretty slim. I mean, Talzin could potentially have led Spirit to be able to take out one of my troopers. I don't know. But anyways, learned my lesson. Hopefully we can avoid that in the future, but we still need to take that squad out. So this is one of the reasons that I really advocate for taking squads that you don't necessarily, you want to save characters for. And, being able to take Wat here is such a huge benefit. So I'm taking Sunfac as lead. Essentially, I just don't have a lead here. But beyond that, I'm trying to just have him permataunt with Wat, and then immediately after that I put the weapons tech onto Wampa, and Wampa then just disallows any kind of revive at all. He also ignores the foresight on Spirit, and he just does a ton of damage in general. So taking Wampa with Wat is actually a lot of fun, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So glad I got the opportunity to. I'm finally actually using Wampa for something. And anyways, I got 34 banners, which is the max after failing once. So happy enough with that result. Hopefully that doesn't screw me too much, because my opponent did absolutely have a really strong background of being able to full clear with no fails. So none of the remaining teams were really going to pose much of a challenge for Padme. It was basically just like one gimme squad, like one squad that I would be able to take out no matter what, and I decided to use it on this Relic Bossk team. This team is blocking ships, and beyond blocking ships, it's also just, one of the stronger teams remaining. I didn't necessarily, I could probably take it out with my own bounty hunters, but beyond that, it would be a stretch for any of my remaining teams to be able to take out, because that Bossk is just truly difficult to take out. Any relics on Bossk make him really tough and resilient to normal squads, but Padme is uniquely suited to deal with him just because her stacks of courage are always just going to be kind of overpowered against most squads. So, just get some stacks of courage up, take Bossk down, take whoever else down. It was pretty easy. So, easy 53 there. You can't really avoid them getting a hit on one of my protections. Honestly, that's pretty good for Padme. So we did clear the top zone, and there were only a couple squads left, and my opponent did put their Millennium Falcon fleet down, which meant that I'd probably be able to get a one-shot on that as well. So now all we have left is a pretty weak Maul squad and this really weird Wat plus Mission and Zaalbar team, and I have my own bounty hunters here. They're all Relic 3 or 4. I think Boba is 4 and the other 2 are 3. And, this squad is really great for 3v3. And I know I mentioned it in my podcast last night. One of the awesome things about it is they ignore taunt. So Zaalbar has the tech from Wat to immediately taunt. And, he'll just permanently taunt until he loses all his protection. And, then he'll just regenerate his protection a ton, both from his natural kit and from his buff. And Mission is continuously regenerating her health and protection, but she doesn't really have a huge health or protection pool, so if you can just one-shot her, then she can't regenerate anything, obviously. One complicating factor here is the fact that Wat is, I think, Relic 3 or 4. He was definitely 7-star with relics on him. And so, he's going to be tough to take down, and so I decided that I was just going to try to annihilate Zaalbar if I had the opportunity, and if I did that, then Wat just bows out. So that's exactly what happened. Zaalbar got too many buffs and he got taken out. So happy enough with that result, and only one team remaining. 54 banners here because Bossk is awesome and helps regenerate both health and protection because of his leadership. And all we have left is a pretty, I don't know. I won't call it bad. An interesting Darth Maul team with, other Sith Empire characters that we never see. And, I had Emperor Palpatine laying around. I had a few other squads as well. I just decided Palpatine plus Nihilus was going to probably just carry the day easy enough. And one of the problems with that immediately reared its head here because Maul jumped out ahead and put days on all my characters, and so instead of gaining turn meter from all of the different debuffs that are expiring, I'm not gaining anything. I guess Vader is because he has his unique Zeta on him, but otherwise we're not really doing the things that Palpatine likes to do. However, all 3 of these characters on the Palpatine team are arguably stronger than any of the 3 characters across from them. Sith Trooper is good, but all he does is taunt, and beyond that, he doesn't have much utility. So I was able to do a Vader lightsaber toss at Maul, and now we're just waiting for an annihilate. This battle's already basically over. Assassin actually made it a little bit interesting there just by attacking the health instead of attacking protection. I had kind of forgotten that she had that ability, but she just didn't do enough damage. Maybe at Relic 7 she would have been able to turn the tide, but on the other hand, Relic 7 Nihilus or Emperor Palpatine would probably have been able to turn the tide even more. So anyways, got the full clear on squads and only one fail, and in 3v3 that's not too bad. It's not a complete disaster, but we're just going to truck along into ships here and just see what happens. They have the Biston build here, and so we're trying to take Biston out as quick as we can before any of the taunts go up, and So, we got his protection down, and Biston's not known for his resilience, but he's also not necessarily like the most squishy ship out there. So we're just trying to make sure he's taken out right away, because if he gets spinning with the Millennium Falcon, and, if I'm not able to daze them early enough, then things can go bad really, really fast. And, that, honestly, if you can take a Rebel fleet to be able to beat the Negotiator, you need Biston to be able to be there for you. So already able to take out Biggs and Biston, so I had an outside shot at maybe being able to take out the Falcon before reinforcements arrived. I had no such luck, of course, and of course the ship that came in was going to be Sunfac, and Sunfac is just really hard to chew through, really difficult. But the good news was that it wasn't the Phantom, which if it was the Phantom, then immediately they'd be able to bring in a second reinforcement, and it would kind of drag the fight out, and that doesn't really work in my favor in terms of banners. So if I can take out Sunfac fast enough, then hopefully I'm going to be able to just take out the Falcon and just call it good. So I took in 5s instead of Clone Sergeant. You kind of got to wing things with ships every once in a while. And just because Falcon is the only ship left, I figured the extra offense was probably going to be a better choice than having an extra taunting tank, which, Houndstooth was already taunting. So, I was able to take the Millennium Falcon out with an AoE, and 60 banners is, it's not inspired work, but at the same time, it's a full clear, and, on the first try is good enough for me. So got the full clear here, and now I needed to wait for my opponent to attack, and from experience last time I knew that I would need to go to bed first before they attacked. So just hanging out, waiting. You can see the map here. Got 2447, which isn't bad for having failed an attack. At the same time, if my opponent was able to full clear me without any kind of fails at all, then I was pretty much just done. So hoped my opponent would fail, and I went to bed, and when I woke up, my opponent had attacked some, and they'd cleared my front zone and part of my other front zone and left the back zone entirely alone. And I was just left wondering, like, is he going to keep attacking? And the eventual answer was no. My opponent was just done. They had finished attacking.
What is this, amateur hour?
So I'll look at my defenses here for a minute, and my front zone, my bottom one, was completely wiped out on the first try for all 3 squads, which is kind of expected, to be honest. My opponent had a lot on offense, and then they failed twice against my Talzin zombie alkalite cheese, and then once against my clones. And then on the bottom, they just didn't even try to attack. So honestly, my defenses are once again untested, which is frustrating. I'm sure my opponent had more in the tank if they wanted to. Clearly, they didn't really care to continue because they had failed 3 attacks, and that meant that I was just mathematically going to win no matter what. And anyways, that was it. I took the screenshot here almost immediately after my win. It got me into Erodium, and I'm not actually number 649 in Division 1, but it was kind of a cool screenshot. Here's the rewards for Erodium, like anyone doesn't actually know what those look like. And anyways, this was a good win. I was happy enough with it. My opponent's roster was really strong. They had a really good record of being able to attack and one-shot most teams, and my defense actually held up pretty decently. So happy enough with this win. Wish I had gotten a little bit more feedback on my defense, but that's fine. That'll come eventually, I'm sure. And I think I'm going to leave you guys here. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Please have a happy and safe New Year's, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.